Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Colin. Like a lot of us, the majority of my formative years were spent fiddling around with bits of cardboard. From the age of like 7 to 15, the only thing I spent more time doing was probably sleeping, and even then I'm not really totally sure. Then, in 2019, disaster struck. Lockdown, and even worse than that, nowhere to play Magic. Thus started my long hiatus from Magic, ending only really recently, to be honest, as I sort of rediscovered my love for the game. My first step back into Magic came through MTG Arena, which I played for a while, made up to Diamond in Historic. Not a good format, wouldn't really recommend. And do you know what, just before I recorded this video, I was going to do like a last minute push to try and make it up to Mythic, just so I could say I had for the video. But to be honest, Arena didn't really scratch my itch. You see, at heart, I am a degenerate combo gamer. My darkest desire in life is just to spend like 10 minutes in a single turn, fiddling about with my cardboard until I finally remember how my deck wins. Now, in the past, EDH has been sort of what I mostly played, but I struggled to fulfill my fantasies for one reason, which is that I sucked at deck building. Like, whenever I'd play someone else's combo deck, I'd always have a blast. But when I later sort of tried to recreate that feeling in a deck, it just ended up feeling sort of bland and unexciting, really. I could build combo decks that won games, but it always ended up just being sort of assemble A plus B with protection, and yeah, GG. Not like the thrill of a true combo turn. So what's changed? Well, a lot's happened to Magic, you could say. And also, I'm no longer 15, so my frontal lobe has hopefully developed a little bit. Most importantly, the bracket system came out earlier this year. Going to assume everyone obviously knows a bit about it, so I won't really bore people with the details. But it's obviously really positive having a way to actually communicate your deck's sort of rough power level so that you don't just end up with one guy stomping the rest of the table. So, my return to EDH has obviously brought a new light on deck building. Now, when I was building my first new deck, I kind of knew the vibe that I wanted. Sort of a toolbox, self-mill graveyard deck. I did a quick Scryfall search for self-mill, and I couldn't really find a commander that I liked. That is, until I found Grist. No, not that Grist. This Grist. Grist Voracious Lava. I was infatuated with the idea of ultimating this little insect and just splurging my entire graveyard into play. Obviously, the first place I looked was EDH Rec, which is where I found the card that would go on to become like the centerpiece of the whole deck. This guy, Colossal Grave Reaver. At face value, obviously it is quite a good card. I figured it sort of fits with the theme and works well with my commander, so I might as well chuck it in. Now, after playing a couple of games with this card, I quickly realised that not only was it good with my deck's mill sub-theme, it was also just totally broken when paired with entomb effects. These allow you to put any card from your library into your graveyard, usually paired with a card like Reanimate to bring a powerful creature back. But what if we could sort of skip that step? Now, if you keep up with Legacy, you might know that Entomb has been pretty contentious sort of recently. Just ended up receiving a ban for making a Reanimator literally just dominate the format for 2 years. Now, cheating creatures from your graveyard into play is usually reserved for green big mana decks in Commander. You've got cards like Green Sun Zenith, Natural Order, and sadly, these effects aren't really often repeatable. However, with our dragon friend, entombing a creature actually just spits it out into play, making for some pretty heinously broken play patterns. Now, when I was first building the deck, the obvious things to look for are big game changes. The bracket system coming out recently, we've got a good sort of idea of what is broken and what's the best thing to do for the most part. After playing around with them, though, I actually made the decision to cut them for two main reasons. Firstly, was that I found most game changers can add a lot of variance to sort of the power level of how your deck plays. If you show up to a pod telling everyone your deck is bracket 3 and can usually win by turn 7, they're obviously going to feel cheated if you draw like Gaia's Cradle and just demolish them by turn 5. Second reason is the price. When I played Magic in the past, I would always just proxy my decks because I was like totally broke. As I say, I was like literally 15 or something. Nowadays, I wanted to own all of my decks and actually enjoyed the challenges of building on a budget. As such, the final list I came to technically could be called bracket 2, but that would be a little misleading as you can actually win by turn 6. So we'll call it bracket 3 for now. As I was tuning and playing the deck, I discovered a pretty key issue. I wanted the interaction to be mostly creature based, so I could obviously sort of keep recurring it. But it ended up having a very, very lackluster removal suite. Generally, my most powerful removal engines are still creatures, such as like Savra, Queen of the Golgari, or like Ravenous Chupacabra being recurred constantly. However, I was really finding the lack of like instant speed spot removal pretty tricky. So I decided on 5 pieces, including an MDFC, as that felt like a pretty good sweet spot. Now, the most important part of the deck is the recursion. Whenever I've seen graveyard decks in the past, the commander is always a big part of the recursion engine, and thus can often feel quite like a glass cannon if they get removed, like a couple of times. I wanted the deck to play perfectly fine, whether I could play in Flip Grist, or if he just sort of sat in the command zone watching from a distance. Because of that, outside of our secret commander, I'm playing 16 other recursion spells, 4 of which being like repeatable engines. This actually means that even through a lot of disruption, even exile effects if you have a sack outlet, the deck can actually bounce back incredibly quickly, as all it takes is like 1 or 2 recursion pieces drawn to start running away with the game. This has really been the key for making the deck a joy to play. The fact that each play you make is easily repeatable with recursion when necessary really makes the toolbox aspect come to life. Feels like your graveyard is an extension of your hand to a certain degree. As such, I haven't really found it necessary to play a lot of card draw, only having 6 cards I could really classify in the category. Finally, the glue that's holding the deck together, the mana base. When designing the deck, I knew that I didn't just want to chuck in like loads of 2 mana rocks. I think it's kind of lazy, and also I probably play way too many 2-drops anyway. I was trying to find a way to fit in my ramp into the deck in a way that felt organic. Which is when I remembered a set I'd drafted recently, Duskmourn, and more importantly, a card called Head Shredder. This card works just like our big dragon, but for lands instead, meaning we can ramp heavily by just doing what the deck was going to do anyway. Mill. To flesh out the package, I added in World Shaper and Aftermath Analyst as easily recurable ways of doing the same sort of thing. So overall, the deck plays 39 lands, including an MDFC. This just ensures that I can hit my land drops up until I'm ready to hit a big ramp effect. So what is the play pattern like? Generally, you spend the first few turns setting up an engine, trying to flip grist, and building a bit of a graveyard. By turn 4 or 5, you want some big mana. So usually from World Shaper or Aftermath Analyst. Then find a way to entomb Colossal Grave Reaver and just keep going, cheating big creatures out from your library into play. Eventually ending in an infinite loop with like Recursion, Eternal Witness, and just some sort of ritual effect. Then you can either find a way to mill your opponents out with Ultra Dementia, or ultimate grist infinite times by proliferating him, which is obviously the best way to do it. Now, to be honest, this deck has got way too many bits of tech for me to go through all of this without making this video like half an hour. But I did really want to sort of highlight a few sort of key cards for anyone who ends up wanting to play the deck and sort of looking for what cards you generally want to be tutoring for. First of all is Izoni, Thousand Eyed. This card is genuinely so unbelievably broken. In fact, it works well with Savra. I can edict my opponent's entire board. It works incredibly well with if I have like an Ultra Dementia or an Extracted Demon, something like that down, so I can keep the chain going with Colossal Grave Reaver. And then, as well as that, is just generating near infinite mana with Pitiless Plunderer. Overall, this card is pretty much irreplaceable. I mean, obviously there are similar cards that do a similar thing, but this is by far the best way of doing that in these colours. As well as that is Metamorphosis Fanatic. Now, building the deck, I knew I needed a creature that could enter to recur creatures, and I found out there's 2 effects in the entire game that do this. So there's this card, and then there's one other. I'll put it up on screen. Don't remember what it's called right now. But they both mean that you can just bring back any creature. And so a very common play pattern would be play Colossal Grave Reaver, and then playing a creature that can entomb to find the Metamorphosis Fanatic, and then sacrifice the creature that can entomb to bring it back with Metamorphosis Fanatic to entomb another creature. It just means you get more power on board for Ultra Dementia, or more creatures for your... Now more creatures entering and leaving for your Extraction Demon. So overall, this card was a super, super good find. The last one that I wanted to highlight here, which I've not had much of a chance to test with, but is really, really strong, is Scourge Familiar. Like, there's so many times when I'm playing the deck and I'm like 1 or 2 mana short and I don't have a single creature that I can get out, which can just get that mana straight up. I know there's this new like MH3 card which you can sacrifice creatures to directly generate treasure tokens. I've actually specifically chosen not to add that because, do you know what, I just think it's way too broken. Like, it just puts a massive target on your head if you play it. I just want my sack outlets to be sack outlets without immediately like just winning me the game on the spot or getting removed. I actually cut Yawgmoth for the exact same reason. But Scourge Familiar fills a very, very similar role, meaning that you can just get that last little burst of mana you need to win the game. Overall, the deck has been quite a big step up from what I'm used to as far as deck building is concerned. As I said at the beginning of the video, I've never considered myself like a particularly strong deck builder. This deck was only really possible for me to build through a lot of time spent in Scryfall, searching for the perfect cards, and through rigorous playtesting and sort of ruthless analysis of each and every card to determine whether they were actually a good fit in the deck or just there because they sort of fit the theme. I started off this build with a vision for how the deck would play, but I could never have really predicted exactly what it's morphed into. The absolute delight that it is to know your entire deck is at your fingertips, and whether you win or lose is fully down to your mastery of the 100 cards at your disposal. Now, thank you for making it to the end. I hope you've enjoyed this insight into how I built the deck and how it developed into what it is now. The deck is nowhere near finalised, and I am constantly finding new bits of tech to try out. If you want to see what the list looks like currently, a link to my Architect profile is in the description. I hope I've inspired you to make a similar sort of deck, and if I have, let me know in the comments. If you have any other suggestions or feedback, please let me know as well. Don't forget to press all the YouTube buttons. And thank you so much for watching. Have a fabulous day.